Welcome to the Urban Herald. We're the team that digs into those big shifts happening, across culture, tech, finance.
And we distill what really matters from our research directly for you.
Today, we're jumping into something massive, something that's reshaping the cultural landscape right now.
Yeah, we're doing a critical exploration, really getting into this huge ongoing phenomenon, the really profound shift being driven by Latin music globally.
And we're going to focus this deep dive through the lens of one particular artist who seems to be right at the center of it all, Bad Bunny.
Exactly. His career trajectory, it just perfectly highlights this whole transformation.
Okay, so let's be clear from the start. We're saying this isn't just like a popular genre having a moment.
No, not at all. What we're analyzing here is way bigger. It's a fundamental structural reprogramming of the global cultural infrastructure itself.
And there's a huge milestone coming up that really drives this point home, isn't there?
There is. It's the perfect catalyst for this discussion. Bad Bunny is officially set to headline the Super Bowl LX halftime show in 2026.
Wow, okay. And the significance of that.
Well, think about it. He'll be the first primarily Spanish-speaking solo artist ever to headline that show, that stage.
That's huge.
It is. And look, it's obviously a massive personal achievement for him, but for our analysis, it's more than that. It's really a defining moment.
A defining moment, how?
It underscores this fundamental shift we're talking about. It signals that the old axis of global pop culture, the one that always seemed to run through London or maybe Los Angeles.
Right, the traditional centers.
That axis has shifted. Our analysis shows it's just not the case anymore. The energy, the tempo, the commercial gravity, it's now pulsing from San Juan, Puerto Rico, out to the entire world.
From San Juan to the world, that's a powerful image.
It reflects the reality.
Yeah.
So our mission today, for you listening, is to really break down how this happened. How did streaming platforms, these huge demographic changes, and this incredibly authentic cultural expression all converge?
And how did they fundamentally reprogram, as we put it, that global cultural infrastructure?
Exactly. We need to understand how Spanish went from being seen by the industry as just, an emerging market language.
Kind of secondary niche almost.
Precisely. To becoming the absolute lingua franca of mass global appeal. That's what this deep dive is about, getting into the mechanics of this new reality.
Okay, so let's start with that Super Bowl booking again. Because it feels like more than just picking a popular act. It feels like a statement.
Oh, absolutely. Think about who makes that call. Apple Music, Rock Nation, the NFL, these are massive corporations.
Right. Heavy hitters.
So when they choose Bad Bunny to headline the single biggest advertising and cultural platform in North America, maybe the world, we need to look at it strategically.
Not just entertainment programming.
Definitely not just that.
Yeah.
It's a strategic corporate acknowledgement. It's them saying, we see the demographic reality, we see the economic reality.
So it's data-driven, not just, say, a diversity initiative.
Look, optics are always part of it. But our analysis suggests this runs much deeper. This isn't just a gesture to, look inclusive. It's a smart business decision. It's an imperative driven by hard user data, consumption patterns. They're literally following the audience and the money.
That makes the contrast with his 2020 appearance even starker, doesn't it?
It really does. Remember back in 2020? He was a guest. He performed alongside Jennifer Lopez and Shakira.
Yeah, huge stars already established.
Exactly. And he was positioned then almost like a cultural ambassador, a feature act, there to add some, let's say, regional flavor, maybe enhance their star power.
But 2026 is totally different.
Structurally, yes. Completely different. He's not a guest. He is the centerpiece. He's the main event.
He's the center of gravity.
That's a great way to put it. His headlining role establishes him as that center of gravity that mainstream entertainment now kind of has to orbit around.
And the reach that gives Spanish language culture.
It's just unprecedented. We're estimating that single performance could expose his music, his language, his culture to well over 100 million global viewers instantly.
Wow. That's immediate validation on a massive scale.
It's huge validation for the entire Latin music ecosystem, yeah.
And, okay, you mentioned the money. Let's dig into the financial evidence, because the numbers we found, they're pretty staggering, right? Yeah. Especially in the U.S. market.
They really are. The growth is just explosive. In 2024 alone, Latin music generated a record-breaking $1.423 billion in revenue, just in the U.S.
Okay, let's pause on that. Nearly $1.5 billion from Latin music. In 1 year.
It's a massive number. And to really appreciate the trajectory, you need context. Go back just a few years to 2020.
Okay.
In 2020, Latin music accounted for about 5.6% of the total recorded music market revenue in the U.S.
Still significant, but okay, 5.6%.
Now jump to 2024, that market
Yeah.
share. It leaped up to 8.1%.
Wow, that's a big jump in just 4 years.
It's significant growth. And crucially, it's sustained growth. This isn't some random spike. It's not cyclical. This feels structural.
So when we step back and look at that data, what's the big takeaway for the industry? Is it just, oh, more people are listening? Or is it deeper?
It's definitely deeper. It's systemic. This kind of exponential financial growth, it reflects what key industry analysts are starting to call the infrastructure, not exoticism phenomenon.
Infrastructure, not exoticism. Unpack that a bit.
It means there's an explicit recognition now that this isn't some passing fad. It's not a flavor of the month thing that's going to disappear next year.
Right, not just something spicy or different for a change.
Exactly. It's a solidified, highly lucrative, globally connected market structure. And the big players, the labels, the platforms, the brands, they now understand they have to integrate this structure into their core long-term strategies.
For revenue, for audience growth, for everything.
For everything. So when companies like Apple Music and the NFL make a massive bet, like the Super Bowl headliner, they're not just betting on an artist. They're investing in the permanence of that infrastructure itself.
Gotcha. So the corporate validation, the Super Bowl, it's really just catching up to, or maybe solidifying, the foundation that was already built.
Precisely.
Hmm.
Which leads us perfectly into how that foundation was built. And you can't talk about that without talking about technology.
The digital platforms.
Absolutely. The digital accelerator.
Yeah.
Look, Bad Bunny's transformation from, a SoundCloud artist in Puerto Rico to this global powerhouse,
Yeah.
it happened incredibly fast.
Yeah, it felt like it came out of nowhere for some people.
And that speed, that trajectory, it was almost entirely dependent on digital platforms. Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music.
How so? What did they enable?
Well, fundamentally, these tools allowed him and others to completely bypass the traditional industry gatekeeping system, meaning he didn't need the blessing of major U.S. radio conglomerates. He didn't need glowing reviews in established English-language music magazines to get heard. He didn't need that centralized approval structure.
He could go direct to the audience.
Exactly. Direct global reach. Which brings us to the real engine here. The algorithm.
Okay, this is where it gets really fascinating, I think. The role of the algorithm in all this.
It's crucial. I mean, look at the data points. He has been Spotify's most streamed artist globally for 3 of the last 5 years.
3 out of 5. That's not just popular, that's dominant.
It's absolute dominance. And the critical point for our analysis is why. Why does the algorithm favor him so much?
And the answer isn't language.
No. Algorithms fundamentally don't care about linguistic preference. They don't understand Spanish versus English versus Korean. What they respond to is engagement.
Clicks, plays, shares, repeat listens.
Exactly. Listener behavior.
Yeah.
How long do people listen? Do they save the track? Do they share it? Do they come back to it? It's these engagement patterns that drive algorithmic promotion.
Which is incredible because it means the technology itself is basically language agnostic.
It is. And that allows Spanish language content, if it drives engagement, to compete head-to-head with English language content on a truly global stage. For attention, for visibility.
It becomes a meritocracy of engagement, not language.
Precisely. And this algorithmic dominance is deeply tied into how Latin music actually makes its money. Its revenue model is fundamentally digital first.
Okay, what do the numbers say there?
Our sources show that in 2024, a staggering 98% of Latin music revenue in the U.S. came directly from digital streaming services.
98%. Wow.
Compare that to, say, older genres or even the overall industry average, which still relies much more heavily on things like physical sales, downloads, or performance licenses from terrestrial radio.
That 98% figure is huge. What does that tell us?
It tells us the genre built its success, its entire economic ecosystem, by mastering the digital space first. It completely circumvented those older, centralized, often quite protectionist industry barriers.
The ones that historically might have demanded assimilation or translation.
Exactly. And because they built this digital-first ecosystem, they could achieve massive global scale while, crucially, maintaining their cultural authenticity and linguistic integrity. They didn't have to change their art, didn't have to translate to reach the world.
The tech allowed the authenticity to scale.
Perfectly put. And if we dig even deeper into the consumption patterns, there's another really telling piece of data. the ad-supported disparity.
Okay, what's that?
So we know Latin music accounts for about 17% of all the content charted on YouTube globally. Huge presence.
Right.
But then look at revenue. Ad-supported streaming, think free YouTube, the free tiers on Spotify. This generates a full 25% of all U.S. Latin music revenue.
25% from ad-supported. How does that compare to other music?
It's way higher. The industry average across all genres is only about 10% of revenue coming from ad-supported.
Okay, so Latin music over-indexes massively on free ad-supported platforms. Why? What does that suggest?
It suggests a few things. First, the audience is enormous and truly global, including in regions where paid subscriptions are less common. Second, it implies this audience is incredibly engaged in these accessible, free digital spaces. Maybe a culture rooted more in sharing and community listening via platforms like YouTube.
So accessibility is key.
Maximum accessibility drives maximum global reach, especially when you dominate the free platforms. It ensures anyone, anywhere can participate.
This whole dynamic, it really forces us to rethink how global culture works, doesn't it? It leads to that idea you mentioned earlier, the trilingual conversation.
Yes. Our analysis points to this as a fundamental reality now. If you, as a policymaker, a marketer, an educator, whatever, if you want to actually engage with 21st century culture, you have to recognize it operates in 3 languages simultaneously.
Spanish, English, and
And algorithm, that's the third essential language.
Explain that. How is algorithm a language here?
Because the transmission mechanism is algorithmic. The message might be crafted in Spanish, the global context might involve English, but how that message gets delivered to millions of people in, say, Jakarta or Berlin or Cairo, that's governed by the logic of the algorithm.
The recommendation engine, the viral pathways.
All of it. So understanding how your content's language maps onto engagement data, how metadata works, how these increasingly language-agnostic recommendation engines prioritize user behavior over the user's native tongue. That understanding is now absolutely essential if you want cultural relevance. You have to speak algorithm.
Okay, so we've seen the global scale, the tech driving it. Let's pivot now and bring it back down to the local level. Because the power Bad Bunny wields isn't just global, it's incredibly potent right at home in Puerto Rico.
Yes, and this demonstrates a whole new paradigm, really, of what we could call cultural sovereignty.
Yeah.
The way his cultural capital translates directly into economic and even political power on the island is remarkable.
Let's talk specifics. That residency he did in 2024, No me quiero ir de aquí, I don't want to leave here.
Right. It wasn't just a couple of shows. It was a massive undertaking, a series of 30 sold-out concerts at the Coliseo de Puerto Rico.
30 shows. And the economic impact.
The estimates are just staggering. Analysts project that residency alone generated somewhere around $200 million in direct economic impact for Puerto Rico.
$200 million from one concert series. How does that even break down?
Well, think about everything involved. Hotels, restaurants, transportation, local vendors, security, venue staff. We found specific metrics suggesting it created something like 21 jobs for every $1 million invested.
Wow.
And direct spending just by the attendees, people flying in, local spending money that was estimated at over $27 million.
So when you frame this as cultural sovereignty,
What we mean is this huge economic boost is driven entirely by the cultural production of a local artist. It's operating independently of, say, traditional colonial economic patterns or reliance on external corporations setting up shop. Its capital being generated and, importantly, circulated locally.
resisting that historical pattern of profits just flowing out of the island immediately.
Exactly. It's a form of localized economic development powered by culture.
And he made a very conscious statement about prioritizing that local audience too, didn't he? With the tickets.
He absolutely did. The first 9 shows of that 30-show run were reserved exclusively for residents of Puerto Rico. You needed a local ID to buy tickets.
That's not just logistics, that's symbolic.
Deeply symbolic.
Yeah.
And political. It was him saying, "My home comes first." It powerfully links that sense of cultural nationalism, that pride of place, directly with his massive global commercial success.
It kind of proves you don't have to choose, right? You don't have to abandon your roots or cater only to outside markets to be the biggest star on the planet.
In fact, his connection to those roots, that authentic local grounding, seems to be the very source of his global power and appeal.
But his influence isn't just economic. It's become overtly political, too. We have to talk about the summer of 2019 in Puerto Rico, the Ricky Renuncia protests.
Yes, that was a critical moment. And his involvement was pivotal Sometimes, celebrity activism can feel a bit performative, maybe superficial.
Yeah, like just posting a hashtag.
Right. This was absolutely not that. His actions were decisive and had real consequences.
What did he actually do?
He was in the middle of a major European tour. Huge shows, big money involved. He paused the entire tour, flew back to Puerto Rico, and physically joined the mass demonstrations in the streets of San Juan demanding the governor resign.
Just pausing a tour like that. That's a massive statement, financially, logistically.
It's an enormous commitment. And his presence on the ground, alongside hundreds of thousands of Puerto Ricans, it amplified the movement massively. His participation was seen as a key factor, contributing to the pressure that ultimately forced Governor Ricardo Rossello to resign.
And he didn't just show up, right? He contributed creatively, too.
Yes, he did. He collaborated with Residente, another massively influential Puerto Rican artist, and the singer Ayo on a track called Afilando los Cuchillos, Sharpening the Knives.
Which became like an anthem for the protests.
Exactly. It captured the anger, the frustration, the determination of that moment. So his actions really showed this new model where a massive entertainment platform can become an immediate, potent vehicle for civic action. He used his cultural weight to directly impact a political outcome.
And this activism wasn't just a one-off thing for that crisis. It seems woven into his work now.
Absolutely. It's ongoing. His music, his interviews, his platform. They consistently address really complex, pressing issues affecting Puerto Rico and beyond. Things like rapid gentrification, the displacement of locals, the impacts of climate change, ongoing systemic
He
oppression.
tackles them directly.
Head on. You hear it clearly on his recent album, Debí Tirar Más Fotos. I should have taken more photos. For him, it seems the massive commercial success and the unflinching political commitment aren't separate. They're intertwined. That blend is his cultural leadership. The music and the politics are inseparable in his world. So we've talked economics, we've talked politics, but maybe the most profound shift Bad Bunny represents is ideological, especially within his own genre.
You mean challenging the norms of reggaeton itself?
Exactly. We're seeing him systematically, consciously deconstruct some of reggaeton's longest-held traditions, particularly its history of, let's be frank, hypermasculinity.
Yeah, for decades, that genre was really characterized by some pretty rigid machismo, very strict heteronormative messages, often quite misogynistic lyrics.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating is that Bad Bunny used his enormous global platform not to conform to those tropes, but to actively shatter them. He specifically targeted gender norms, sexuality norms, right in the heart of the genre.
Is there one moment that really stands out as embodying that challenge?
I think the clearest, most potent example has to be the music video for Yo Perreo Sola back in 2020. The title means I Twerk Alone.
Right. I remember that video causing a huge stir.
It did. Because to drive home this message of female autonomy, of women owning their space on the dance floor, he performed the entire song in full drag.
Not just one look either, right?
No, he embodied three distinct, powerful, female-presenting personas throughout the video. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't coded. It was an explicit, visual, direct challenge to the genre's historical machismo.
And an advocacy for women's agency.
Absolutely. Advocating for consent, for respect, for the idea that women don't need a man's permission or presence to dance and enjoy themselves.
That visual was powerful, but it also tackled something structural within the culture and the music, didn't it?
It did. It addressed the dynamics of the club, the
Yeah.
party scene, and the video underlined it with that closing message that just resonated everywhere.
What was the exact quote?
It said, Si no quiere bailar contigo, respeta. Ella perrea sola. Which translates to, if she doesn't want to dance with you, respect that. She twerks alone.
Wow. Just putting that statement out there in that context.
It was huge. That one line helped redefine the genre's conversation around female agency and consent. It showed reggaeton could be a tool for social commentary, not just party fodder. Honestly, it felt like an act of real cultural bravery given the genre's history.
And it goes beyond just that one video, right? It's about how he presents himself generally. He seems comfortable with ambiguity.
Yes. And that refusal to be pinned down, to be easily categorized,
Yeah.
that's a huge part of his power. He normalizes ambiguity simply by being.
Like when he's asked about his own identity.
Exactly. There's that famous quote where he was asked about his future, his identity, and he said something like, I don't know what I'll be in the future. One never knows in life.
Simple, but profound.
It is. Because that lack of rigid definition, that comfort he projects with fluidity, or whether it's gender expression, fashion choices, or sexuality, it's been incredibly empowering for a lot of people.
And what impact has that had on the next wave of artists coming up in Latin music?
It feels like it's genuinely cleared a path. You see younger Latin artists now who feel much more empowered to explore their own identities, playing with gender norms, exploring fashion, being open about sexual fluidity without the same level of fear.
Fear of commercial backlash.
Exactly. The kind of backlash that might have been almost guaranteed just a decade ago in that scene. So his influence marked this really progressive ideological evolution within the genre itself. It's shifting towards recognizing diversity and nonconformity, not as liabilities, but maybe even as cultural assets.
Okay, this feels like the perfect transition into the big concept that kind of ties all these threads together: the economics, the politics, the ideology, this idea of Latino futurism.
Yes, we really need to define this term because it signifies something crucial. The complete reversal of the traditional crossover model that dominated for so long.
Explain the old crossover model first. What did that usually mean for a Latin artist?
Historically, crossover meant the artist had to adapt. They often had to sing in English, or at least incorporate a lot of English. They might hire big-name American or British producers to make their sound more palatable to those markets.
Basically, they had to compromise, right? Dilute their specific sound or language to fit into the dominant English language market.
Often, yes. There was an implicit, sometimes explicit, pressure to assimilate culturally and linguistically to achieve that mainstream success in the US or Europe. Bad Bunny and this whole new generation, they've essentially just destroyed that blueprint.
So the new model is?
The new model is Spanish language content achieves massive global dominance without needing linguistic compromise, without demanding cultural assimilation, without artists feeling they have to water down the specificity of their sound, their dialect, their perspective.
They're conquering the global mainstream entirely on their own terms.
Exactly. It's a fundamental power shift.
And the proof is just undeniable when you look at the charts.
Right. Oh, the chart history is the smoking gun here. Take his 2022 album, Un Verano Sin Ti.
Huge album.
Monumental. It spent 13 non-consecutive weeks at #1 on the Billboard 200 chart, the main U.S. album chart.
13 weeks at #1 for an album entirely in Spanish.
Think about that. Before this era, getting a Spanish-language album into the top 20 was a major achievement. For one to sit at #1 for basically 3 months, it was completely unprecedented. It shifted the entire paradigm of what was possible.
It went from being a statistical anomaly to maybe the new normal.
It certainly paved the way, because then, more recently, we saw something even more remarkable happen.
What was that?
We saw Bad Bunny's latest, Debbie Mars Photos, and Forza Regita's album 111 Expantia simultaneously occupy the #1 and #2 spots on the Billboard 200.
Wow. The top 2 albums in the U.S., both entirely in Spanish.
That's not just dominance anymore. That signals market control. The center of gravity has shifted.
And that concentration of power, that chart takeover, that's what embodies Latino futurism.
It perfectly embodies it. Some analysts we follow describe Latino futurism as, and I love this phrase, a firmware update to the Western imagination.
Okay.
Where Caribbean rhythms, Latin sounds, Spanish language, they're not niche influences anymore. They are dictating the global cultural tempo.
So the cultural conversation itself is increasingly happening in Spanish first.
Yes, and English speakers, or speakers of other languages, are now the ones catching up, maybe using subtitles, using translations. It's a complete reversal of the previous power dynamic, where English was always the default.
And you see this ripple effect validating the shift, right?
Yeah.
With non-Latin artists.
Oh, absolutely. Spanish is acquiring a new kind of prestige within global pop culture. You see major non-Latin artists, people like Cardi B, Drake, even European stars like Rosalia, who collaborates across languages. They're not just doing one-off features anymore.
What are they doing?
They're actively incorporating Spanish phrases, sometimes whole verses, into their own music. They're actively seeking out Latin producers, Latin songwriters. They're structurally integrating Spanish language and sounds into their work.
Why? Because they have to.
Because they recognize that's where the energy is. That's where the innovation is happening right now on a global scale. They're adjusting to the new tempo being set by Latin music.
And the beautiful paradox in all of this, especially with Bad Bunny,
is that his absolute refusal to compromise, his doubling down on his specific Puerto Rican identity, his dialect, his local focus,
that enhanced his global commercial appeal rather than limiting it.
massively enhanced it.
Yeah.
Because especially in the streaming era, audiences everywhere seem genuinely fatigued by those overly polished, focus-grouped, homogenized pop personas.
People crave authenticity.
They crave sincerity, yeah. They crave specific cultural perspectives. Bad Bunny's unwavering authenticity, his commitment to his slang, his island, his politics that become his unique selling proposition, his specificity became his path to universality. It's brilliant.
Mm.
Okay, so we've laid out this massive cultural earthquake, right? The shift is undeniable. But the crucial question now is this sustainable? Is Bad Bunny just a unique supernova, or is this a lasting change?
Right. Can this momentum be maintained? Is it replicable?
And the answer, based on our analysis of industry moves, seems to be yes. It looks sustainable because the infrastructure is now being built, or rather solidified, to support it long term. Major corporations are locking this shift in.
So it's moving beyond just one artist's incredible success.
Definitely. It's about the entire tech and music industries recognizing Latin music not as a genre category, but as a core strategic priority for their global business.
How do we see that playing out with the big streaming companies? Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube?
Well, they're treating Latin music as absolutely central to their global user acquisition and retention strategies. You see massive investment in Latin artists, the launch of dedicated Spanish-language content development hubs, specialized editorial teams, and playlists.
And this isn't just them being culturally aware.
Look, that might be a side benefit, but fundamentally, this is hard business strategy. It's driven by the undeniable data.
Mm-hmm.
The Latin music audience is one of the fastest growing, youngest, and most digitally engaged audiences on the planet. They need this audience to grow.
Makes sense. And the traditional record labels, the majors, are they adapting too?
They have to, or risk becoming irrelevant in a huge chunk of the market. We've seen Universal Music, Sony Music, Warner Music. They've all significantly expanded their Latin divisions.
Meaning more investment.
Huge amounts of investment pouring into regional talent development, not just in Puerto Rico, but across Latin America, Colombia, Mexico, Argentina, Chile. They understand this wave is bigger than any single artist and requires robust, on-the-ground infrastructure to nurture and sustain.
And what about brands? How are they reacting to this shift in cultural power?
We're seeing a really interesting evolution there, too. They're moving beyond the old, frankly, lazy model of just taking an English language ad campaign and getting it translated into Spanish as an afterthought.
So what's the new approach?
The smart brands are developing deeply integrated strategies where Spanish language content, Latin culture, and Latin artists are actually central to the primary marketing effort, not peripheral.
Like Bad Bunny's own big partnerships.
Exactly. His premium deals with global giants like Adidas or Cheetos or Corona.
Yeah.
These demonstrate that top-tier Latin artists now command the biggest endorsement deals without having to culturally compromise, without having to code switch for the brand. The culture itself is now leading the brand conversation.
Okay, so the industry infrastructure is adapting, brands are adapting, but what really guarantees the long-term sustainability?
At the end of the day, it comes down to demographics. Pure and simple demographic destiny.
The projections for the U.S. Latino population.
They're undeniable. Current projections estimate the Latino population will constitute nearly 30%, almost a third of the total U.S. population by the year 2060.
That's a massive demographic shift.
It guarantees sustained, built-in, and ever-increasing demand for Spanish-language content across all forms of media, music, film, TV, news, podcasts. It fundamentally reshapes the American consumer landscape forever.
And crucially, unlike some past immigrant waves, younger generations of Latinos seem to be maintaining stronger ties to Spanish, right?
Yes, that's a key finding.
Yeah.
The older models predicted gradual linguistic assimilation over generations. But current data suggests something different is happening. Bilingualism, or even Spanish-dominant households, are becoming more the norm among younger U.S. Latinos. Cultural retention seems higher in the digital age.
And it's not just Latinos listening either.
Absolutely not. That's the other critical piece. Non-Latino consumption of Spanish-language music, particularly artists like Bad Bunny, is surging globally. It proves that those linguistic barriers we assumed were impenetrable are actually collapsing rapidly in the digital space. The accessibility provided by streaming algorithms, by easily available lyrics and translations, it means a huge percentage of Bad Bunny's global fan base doesn't actually speak Spanish as their first language. But they're still deeply engaged. Language is becoming less of a barrier to cultural connection.
So bringing it all together,
Great.
What's the ultimate lesson here? For any institution listening, whether they're in advertising, government, education, the arts.
The core lesson from our analysis is unavoidable. Policymakers, brands, cultural programmers, educators, they must now acknowledge that the 21st century cultural conversation, especially in the Americas, but increasingly globally, is inherently
Trilingual?
trilingual by default. Spanish, English, and algorithm. If you ignore any one of those three components, you're fundamentally failing to connect with the modern mainstream audience. You're missing the conversation.
And that realization has very real practical consequences for how these institutions need to operate, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It's not just theory. Practically, it means institutions need to start, like yesterday, hiring native Spanish speakers in key creative roles, in executive positions, not just translation departments, but integrated into the core strategy.
What else?
It means recognizing Spanish language education not as an elective, but as a vital component of global literacy for everyone. It means programming Latin artists in prime slots at festivals, in museums, on main stages, year-round, not just as a token gesture during Hispanic Heritage Month.
It's about full integration.
It's the integration phase. This is the new cultural norm taking shape, and institutions need to catch up and embed it into their DNA.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize everything we've covered in this deep dive today. We've looked at the economics, the technology, the politics, the ideology.
And the core conclusion seems clear. Bad Bunny's phenomenal success. It isn't some random fluke. He's not just a uniquely talented outlier, although he is talented.
He's more like the first huge, globally visible, and crucially sustainable example of this entirely new cultural ecosystem.
An ecosystem created by this perfect storm, this convergence of demographic inevitability, the democratizing power of technology, and this fierce commitment to cultural authenticity.
Which means that old conversation, the one we had for decades about Latin music needing to cross over into the English mainstream.
It's just obsolete now, functionally irrelevant. The reality is, Latin music, in many ways, is the global mainstream now.
Other genres, other cultural producers are increasingly positioning themselves relative to its gravity, its tempo.
Exactly, not the other way around. The axis has permanently shifted. The cultural reprogramming is complete.
And it feels irreversible, doesn't it? And still accelerating.
It does, as some of our source material puts it quite bluntly. If you didn't understand what just happened over these past few years, well, you still have some time to catch up. But the shift itself, it's done. It's real.
The foundation is laid. The infrastructure is being built upon it.
Which leaves us, and leaves you listening, with one final provocative thought to maybe mull over after we wrap up.
Okay, what is it?
We talk in detail about how Bad Bunny's cultural influence translated into real-world outcomes, boosting tourism, generating hundreds of millions in economic impact for Puerto Rico, even helping to catalyze significant political change, all largely independent of official government structures.
Right, his soft power.
Exactly. So the question to ponder is, how far does that soft power of a single, culturally authentic artist actually reach in the 21st century? Can this kind of cultural diplomacy, this ability to shape global perception and drive tangible local change, can it now potentially exceed the influence or the capabilities of traditional nation-states or official diplomatic channels?
Can an artist wield more effective soft power than a government?
That's the question. And exploring that might tell us a lot about the true power dynamics of this new cultural infrastructure we've been discussing today.